Welcome back to Gran Jagamito in the Pedroche Valley of Andalusia, Spain. With all the spring growth, we face the challenge to manage that abundance in some areas that cannot be devoted to regular grazing. We are in our Zone B, which does not have the usual paddocks as we are building and managing on the majority of our land. This zone will be used at some point in a different way that I have mentioned here and there. Things like campground, equestrian training area, maternity ward for pigs are some of the planned uses for it. Here are some aerial still images that we use for planning purposes. I thought they are worth sharing. The colors vary a bit depending on sunlight. I could color grade them to make them look pretty and more evenly colored, but let's stick to reality. Given that we find time to create the necessary infrastructure, this might be a campground. Up here at the Altiplano, at this very poor area, the signs of bale grazing to increase the organic matter rapidly are clearly visible. This shows most of our Zone B and the surroundings. You can also see some of the animal lanes and the easement to the left. The pond that is always full during summer and the seasonal creek can be seen here. Also the former road that is slowly disappearing. Not full during summer is the waterhole in A9. We need to find time to plant vetiver around it and some bushes and trees later on. At the entrance of our land is the outflow of the nearby water reservoir. It always carries water and we have a shallow well right next to it. This here is not yet Crotalaria huntea. This is the seed bank that opened. This is just the same thing that also happened down there in City 1. Because there has been an intervention, there's moisture, and so all these seeds also decided to germinate. And you can see this all over the place. This here is Crotalaria huntea. It is still very tiny, but it is coming up. And now the big question is, how fast will it grow? And will it be outcompeted by the other plants for sun? Or will it rise above the others and gain speed? This remains to be seen. Here in this particular spot, there's a lot more of what we seeded. And there are no other plants, except a few. This is pretty interesting. So this, what some of you told me were plantain, this is coming up and very good. And in between the smaller ones, that is Sunn Hemp. So that must be the Sunn Hemp. While this guy here is plantain. We will see how this goes. But it's the effect that we had in CT1. Only that there the pigs did uproot everything and here the mules tilled. But it's pretty much the same thing. Well, this intervention loosened up the soil and now plants have an opportunity, or the seeds actually. So the seeds from those other guys decided now to germinate, and this is now that we do have a multi-species situation here. It's not that we have a monoculture of Sunn Hemp. But I do hope that the Sunn Hemp will outgrow everybody else, because the Sunn Hemp is the heat-loving plant. Let's see how it goes. This, on the other hand, is what we seeded. This must be the Sudan grass. And I don't see any of the well-known other plants. So this area here is different. It is a bit drier because it's above the swale. But apparently the Sudan grass is coming up. So that seems to work. This here at the very end is also Sudan grass. Somewhere there is a line where it changes to Sunn Hemp, and the natural grasses that are also coming up, and all the other plants and flowers and all that. And this part here upslope is all Sudan grass that we added. And we will later see how this looks like when summer is really there. Let's say a month or two from now, this area should look totally different, green, while the part up there should then be drying out, or has dried out by then. We will certainly graze this area also between now and then to take advantage of that forage. But I can clearly see that a heavier intervention than just grazing is needed. And I shall repeat, this is a job for pigs. So my feeling is we will not bring in the mules again, but instead work on proper fencing for pigs and give them the opportunity to work for us and also produce nice hemp. I think that is more sensible and more natural, and that is a practice that people here in this area have been doing for centuries until the invention of the tractor. Probably it's like that. I believe the green manure definitely added to this berm here. It was a good choice to throw this out, because now what is going to be soil is now protected and can become soil. And the palovnias are much taller. And interestingly, here the flower heads are closed, most of them, while further ahead, which is still in the sun, the yellow mustard is the dominant color there. But it looks very nice. So I definitely like how this came out. Here in this part, the seeding also happened in a different way. So the stand is a lot denser. There are more plants. While in the area down there, when they began to seed, the older Juan had this idea of mixing the seed with soil in order to not waste so many seeds. That is a technique that apparently in the past was used when seeding rye and wheat and all that, which they cultivated amongst the oak trees here. I said that it's not so a good idea to reduce the amount of seed that we are throwing out. Instead, we wanted to have a lot of seed, which is why we have so many for this whole area. And it turned out that the 5 bags that we had were definitely enough. But in the past, I believe what they did is they mixed the seed with some dirt, some soil, in order to save, because one seed means one plant, and the grain head means then a lot more grain. So the performance was better economically, but that is not our goal. The idea is to have a lot of biomass and a lot of plants, so more is better in that case, because it's not about the performance. It's performance, but it's a different measure. So what we want to measure is biomass, organic content in the soil, and not how many grains we can get for every grain that we use to seed. This is an interesting detail here from this palovnia tree. You can see what the stem or the trunk from last year was, and that it broke off there. And now, if I zoom out, you will see how much has already grown since they started to grow again. So this is truly impressive. And with these three here, you can clearly see the same thing. So the new growth on top of the old trunk, I would say this is certainly 50 centimeter. And this is not since a while. It can still be measured in weeks. I will have to look it up when they started to regrow and look what they have gained so far. This time they are going to be tall. This one here is even more impressive. So it started down there fresh. So somewhere down there this new piece came up. You can see there to the left the old one that the cows broke off. And this one goes up and up and up and is pretty thick, and now at the top branches out. And if I zoom out, you can see how this looks like. So this is all the growth just in the last few weeks that this tree managed to put up. And that is why I picked those palovnia trees. I wanted them to produce biomass, big leaves, up to 80 centimeters in diameter. They are not yet there, but I can clearly see that they can produce leaves that large. And that is a lot of biomass that will fall to the ground and later on will end up on the berm and help us to build soil up there. And these here, they should also provide a lot of shade, because they are south facing, to the area here around that integrated pond. And it's the same idea for the others back there. So I'm very hopeful that this will be a very productive garden on the top of this berm once we come to this point. And this here is equally interesting. So this is the area right below the integrated pond, and a little bit further down we created a new well by accident, and from the aerial pictures that was clearly visible. And what we have here that is kind of cheating the human eye. It looks like that we have a lot of natural grasses coming up here instead of the Sunn Hemp, but the Sunn Hemp is here. It is just pretty small, so there you have it. And you can, again, I have to say this, you can clearly see the effect of tilling. Of course, I'm not an advocate of tilling now. It is just that this intervention, the same way as pigs would do, creates a positive effect. So I want to do this going forward with pigs instead of the mules and human labor. And you can see where it comes up. It follows the lines where the plow went through. So this gives a few indications about how we should manage this. I'm pretty excited about the learning. And this here, by the way, is that tall that when I came in, a little rabbit that wasn't so little jumped away. It was maybe 1.5 meters away from me. Of course I did not have the camera ready, but this is also a very positive sign, because this means this creates habitat for all kinds of creatures. So I am happy with the development. And if you look at the forecast, we are already in the summer heat. So today we saw 30 degrees centigrade, and the forecast calls for even more. Supposedly there will be some clouds, but whether it will rain, that will remain to be seen. There you can see those clouds that are forecasted. So maybe there's a thunderstorm developing tomorrow. maybe not. It would be great, but you never know. And we are also planning to do something, another intervention. So as an extension of this, but a little bit higher, we want to put not a swale, more a trench. So a very shallow thing on contour around here. So somewhere along that line where the trees are. And we then extend the pipe that we have back there. Yeah, back towards in my back. So that pipe over there. And we can use that to pump this trench full of water and use it as an irrigation system. Instead of trying to sprinkle or use drip irrigation or something like that, we just feed this trench, and then based on the slope, you can clearly see that this is a not so simple slope. It's definitely something that goes down, and based on that, based on gravity, this should then help to maintain the moisture in this area once the real summer heat kicks in. So that is our plan. And if that fails and we suddenly see the Sunn Hemp suffering and we have not started to graze this from this area on, then we can still do something else. And this trench might then also be helpful in the future. And who knows, maybe we even make it wider and call it the swale. We will see. But we have a tool for the backhoe to make this relatively a quick job. What is also quite interesting, on our end, we are extremely busy now. I told the guys up front that when spring comes around, we will be more and more busy. All the other people around us, you cannot see anyone doing anything. Because it's a totally different way of doing things. While we are busy and working and making things and scrambling to get everything done before the heat comes, they just look after the animals. And there are not that many animals around at the moment. So the other pieces of land are mostly empty. And I don't really understand that. But then I'm not from around here. I don't have any experience. But I do notice. And I don't know. We continue what works for us. Well, here in this area, it definitely looks pretty clean. That should also help the dogs with ticks and all the other creatures, and therefore help me. Yeah, they have been at this also. But of course during the day it is pretty hot, so they prefer to stay there in the shade. And tomorrow the guys want to shear them, so that should then help more. But it is getting lighter, and once they're done here, they will then go out and take care of this area there. And then we have a few other areas planned. So they will basically be in the compound for a while. And we keep the dogs away from them. Because we have learned that that is not a very good combination. This is Maribel, the bottle calf. And she's definitely eating grass now and other types of forage, which is very good. Here in this area we have started to strip graze, and the idea is to graze this to the ground, so we don't want good soil here, but nonetheless it will develop, because this area should become a campground first, and later on I want to have some horse training area here, because it's a completely open piece of land here. Those solar panels, they will change location soon, once we have done the necessary construction for that. And the strip grazing will then continue tomorrow and the next days and so on through the whole area there in the back. So basically the strips will continue in that direction and then go left, and eventually the whole area will be grazed. And we use this instead of the straw because we have to forage, but it requires human supervision, and while there is no human to do the supervision, they will be up in the sacrifice paddock where they have straw. So grazing is from 8:30 to 1500, and then they are back to the straw. But that should work, and we do not need to feed them alfalfa pellets just yet. This, by the way, is also very interesting. So this is our easement, and any other road looks basically just the same. As you can see, this is sand. This is not soil, this is just sand. So our soil is extremely sandy, and therefore it gets wet very quickly, and then it dries out very quickly again, because we lack still a lot of organic material in our soil. But that is what we're working on. So while the dogs are in their enclosure, the sheep are assigned to this job here. They are not all in the enclosure. There are some outside, but that's not a problem, because when they're not in a pack, they are not that eager to hunt. At the same time, the cows are strip grazing here. We don't use a back fence, so there is a polywire in front, so that they know what is the fresh area. It doesn't matter that they walk back. So this is also going on. We have started to plant vetiver now that we have enough here in this temporary creek, the seasonal creek. And we also figured out that we can pump water into it. It will flow back into the well, and then it will be pumped out again. So it's a circle, or it's a cycle. And this should then give us a lot more vetiver here in this seasonal creek, so that we can plant more vetiver. And yes, it is a little bit hard to open up a hole to put the slip in.
En chancla. ¿El pasto de allá arriba salió también? El de por encima de la zanja.
Le tenía que caer una tormentita.
Claro.
Le cayó una poquita de agua. Pues venía del día.
Well, this here has been eaten between horses and the cows. But that's okay. And we are a little bit behind with all the ideas regarding chickens and hens, but it doesn't matter. At some point we have a little bit more time to continue with that. Spring is a very busy moment, and now getting into summer makes us even more busier. So we were a little bit too optimistic. But we have to do what we have to do. So here we have the single strand of polywire. The area is a lot wider than before, so it's not really a strip, it's more a sector. The reason is now the 3 humans can do something else, and that something else is to plant vetiver, which is also urgent, and there's not so much pressure on this fence here because there is enough food, and the best fence is where the food is. So the animal will stay where the food is and not try to go somewhere else if there is enough. And the horses are on the other side. And today is Friday, and by 3 o'clock the cows will be out. That fence will be gone. And over the weekend there are 2 established paddocks, and I will take the herd of bovines to those. And Monday is, at least for one of the guys, a holiday, because it's a holiday that is only celebrated in one village, and that's a typical Spanish thing. So if you look at holidays for Spain, you will find that there are only a few, and then on top of that comes the holidays defined for the autonomous region, and on top of that the holidays for each and every village. They have the right to declare some day, because of something, a holiday, and as an employer you have to respect that. A lot of people from outside Spain, me included, do not expect this, but this is how it is. But the guys have figured out how to rotate, and they won't leave me alone just because there's a holiday. So I'm only alone with everything on a weekend. And when there's a holiday between Monday and Friday, one of them will definitely be here and do the chores. So that's good. So thank you guys for that. They also can go out there to the animal lane, which is okay. This is a dead end, so they basically can go there and do a left behind the chicken coop, and then they are there in the dead end. But there's forage, and that's okay. And all those brassicas that we have here in the foreground, a little bit in the shadow. Let me get in there so that you can see them better. All that. Somebody will eat this at a later point when the grasses have gone dormant. So I believe this is not a total waste. And at the moment it's living roots in the soil, and I believe that is very important. And maybe one more word about the grasses and the brassicas and the effect of grazing. I do know that when the animals graze one specific type of plant, then of course that plant might go extinct. And in that case the brassicas would then win. But in our case I believe the brassicas will be eaten the same way as the grass is being eaten. It just happens at 2 different points in time. So it's maybe not the same thing. But in any case, we want to have a multi-species grazing system. Right now we just have the horses and those bovines here. But once the fencing advances and is safe for pigs, it will then also be safe for small ruminants. So that means we can then have a flock of sheep, not just a few, but let's say 100 or so, and then we can leave. Then we can leave the area after the bovines have taken off the top and bring in the sheep for a second round of grazing, things like that. So that is part of the plan, but we can't do it just yet. They are pretty much full.
That should be it for today. Well, almost. I guess, yeah, there is something else.
The bulls are sniffing the cows, and here and there they have tried to do their job.
Please come back in a few days to see how we go into summer.
So step by step, all the mothers will be pregnant again. And next year, around the same time, we might then have more calves. And there is no intention to sell any of the calves at the moment. Of course, eventually that will happen. But first, we try to grow the herd so that we have a better animal impact.